Given the relatively dominant position that hip-hop occupies atop the dizzying heights of the global entertainment industrial complex, it can be easy to lose sight of its humble beginnings and its enduring role as a source of revolutionary politics.
I got a letter from the government the other day. I opened and read it and said they were suckers.
I know this for a fact. You don't like how I act. You claim I'm selling crack, but you be doing that. I'd rather say see ya, cause I would never be ya. Be your officer, you wicked overseer.
Call me Little Bobby Hutton, cause I'm first to push the button. Rappers don't be saying nothing to the system, we say fuck 'em.
Por eso decimos fuck, por eso hacemos hip hop. No nos importa tu placa, tu metralla ni tu glob. Tu mente en shock, fucking police stop. Recuerda que el tiempo pasa y nunca para en el clock.
Though it didn't really break out until the late 70s and early 80s, hip-hop's genesis story began in the summer of 1973 in the South Bronx. At the time, New York City's northernmost borough was, by all appearances, a war zone. Decades of neglect, ill-thought-out public infrastructure projects, white flight, racist redlining policies, and urban decay had reduced entire city blocks to rubble. Rampant poverty and unemployment had created a vacuum that was filled by street gangs with hundreds of small crews constantly battling over territory and literally setting large sections of the city on fire. Out of this simmering cauldron of social and economic tension, hip-hop emerged as a vibrant DIY subculture spread through house parties thrown by working-class Black and Puerto Rican youth who were alienated and excluded from New York's decadent disco scene. A catalyzing moment of the emerging hip-hop scene was the formation of the Universal Zulu Nation on November 12, 1973. Founded by members of a gang called the Black Spades, the Zulu Nation built hip-hop into a tool for community organizing, bringing members of different gangs together, settling street-level beefs, and introducing codes of conduct, all while imbuing the scene with formative political values of street-based community solidarity and Pan-African consciousness. The Zulu Nation is credited with constructing the foundation of hip-hop culture, forged around 5 core elements: MCs, DJs, graffiti, B-boys and B-girls, and the 5th element, street knowledge.
But then I got wise, and I began to listen to the whack teachers in the wick-wack system. My mother put me in where I used to shoot up, which means black school in Swahili. And there is where I learned black history and how to be the best that I can be.
We don't talk to police, we don't make a peace bond. We don't trust in the judicial system, we shoot guns. We rely on the streets, we do battle in the hood. I was born in the G code, embedded in my blood. We don't talk to police.
In the decades that have followed, hip-hop has been transformed into a global phenomenon and a multi-billion-dollar industry in its own right. But the 5 foundational elements have survived and adapted over the years, providing a sustained authenticity that has allowed radical artists to continue to innovate, carve out space, and even fight back against the industry's overall creep towards commercialization. Over the next 30 minutes, we will explore hip-hop as a potent and persistent source of revolutionary culture, rooted in the oppression, exploitation, and criminalization faced by youth, and particularly poor youth of color. Along the way, we'll speak with a number of grassroots artists who are continuing to spit truth to power, all while organizing their communities, tearing up stages, and making a whole lot of trouble.
1 for the revolution, 2 for the flow. If the break boys are dancing, you should probably go. If the MCs and DJs be rocking to foe, and the graph writers getting up, you already know. And yo, 1 for the revolution, 2 for the flow. If you see 12 coming, you should run, Joe. Matter of fact, run fast, bro, don't run slow. They wanna get you in the cage, since you already know.
Hip hop stands for his or her infinite power helping oppressed people. That comes from the temple of hip hop. Okay, so that's from, OGs like KRS-One and other people getting together and figuring out how to effectively uplift the more positive elements of the culture that are based in community liberation and empowerment.
Hip-hop to me is a way to be able to spread a message of resistance to a larger audience.
Hip-hop to me is a way to share my story before anybody else has a chance to twist up my words or to twist up my experiences.
It's resistance and creativity. That's what hip-hop is to me.
Hip-hop initially rose up speaking to injustices. Eventually it rose into the stories speaking to the issues of the oppressed.
The early days was very humble. It wasn't a lot of money. There wasn't a big budget. It was kind of put together by people with whatever they had. People had come up with this medium of going through the rubble and putting graffiti up and breakdancing and emceeing and DJing, and you know, it was a way of resistance. The same youth that were throwing bricks and rocks and pushing back the police, they have something to say.
Para mí el hip hop es una herramienta de transformación, es una cultura que contiene unos principios de vida, principios que incluyen la unidad, el respeto, el amor, pero sobre todo también la diversión, como esta necesidad de defender la alegría. Hay una frase de Grandmaster Caz, de un DJ, él menciona que el hip hop no inventó nada, lo reinventó todo.
We peep the allegory at the campfire listening. Elders share the stories of the vampire's victims. How do I not make the same mistake? Wisdom, generate division, obliterate the prison.
Freedom's all I wanted, but I couldn't afford it. My baby's got the spirit, just brilliant and gorgeous. Oh yes, the self-defense endorsement. Always a quiet when she about to load it. Hold it, it's amor about to load it. Oh shit, and the whole barrio support it.
Seen a whole lot of people want friends. Seen a whole lot of people want bands. Seen a whole lot of people can't get what they want, so a whole lot of people pop dance. And say the means don't justify the ends. Do the ends ever justify the means? And when we end all of this hardship, if we just put rich biggest in the guillotine?
Cause I can't watch these kids die and then lie like I give a fuck and not do a fucking thing, but lie down like I given up. So get a gun if you ready. We gripping on the machete. For anybody involved, we got a problem forgetting.
Pensar por cuenta propia es un lujo que cuesta caro. A ellos no les conviene que te separes del ganado. Más ganan ellos si los mantienen desinformados. Una tierra empobrecida y más fuerza para el Estado.
Fuck the parliament, fuck the cops, and fuck the robber baron bosses, and fuck they offices. Predominant model of economics, and elephant cock in they ballot boxes.
It came from the Bronx in the 70s in New York City, and now it's worldwide. Hip-hop is like folk music. It's very much a historical record. These are stories that are very telling of the American empire, you know, looking from within. And I think that's why it's so compelling, and that's why it resonated. People may not know it, but I think the reason that hip-hop spread is because there's stories that everyone needs to hear and is interested in hearing.
Hip hop es una cultura universal que parte de un contexto de marginación, de empobrecimiento, de criminalización, que es un contexto muy específico que sucedió en los años 70 en Nueva York, pero que tiene similitudes con otras problemáticas en otros territorios por los temas justo de explotación, de encarecimiento de la vivienda, de la falta de oportunidades.
It came from people who had been displaced historically from the continent of Africa to North America, to Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. It also came from ethnicities that had been mixed in the process of the colonial subjugation and conquest of the so-called New World.
That was significant in drawing me in because we learned that we had a shared story. We had a story of not only oppression, but resistance.
We can measure history in terms of what we know about our experience here in the United States as descendants of people who were stolen from the continent of Africa. But we also have to be able to measure our existence and our influence on what happened before that, what's currently happening in the African diaspora and on the African continent, and struggles for liberation and self-determination.
Driving force is just the songs of my ancestors, the songs that they sung to be able to speak to resistance, to speak to fighting, to speak towards challenging and removing any and all people that wish to destroy our people.
Some of the major influences that I've had musically have been folks who share their narratives in a really honest way, in a really vulnerable way, especially when they go to represent their anger and their rage with the way that these systems of oppression are set up around us.
I recognize first and foremost that I'm a guest in the house of hip hop. I don't take someone else's experience and try to whiteify it. I see things through the lens of white people. And so I feel like it's like my job to criticize white culture in the way that a white dude can. And so I use my music to confront the shittiest parts about white culture, imperialism and colonialism and capitalism and authoritarianism.
Although it has since spread all around the globe, hip-hop first emerged from and has always remained rooted in the lived experiences of Black and Latina youth hustling to survive in America's inner-city ghettos. And the so-called golden age of hip-hop, spanning the late 80s to the mid-90s, were especially turbulent times. The flooding of poor, racialized neighborhoods with crack in the mid-80s provided the spark for a rapid surge in street violence waged between increasingly well-funded and heavily militarized gangs. This, in turn, provided the justification for the ramping up of Ronald Reagan's war on drugs, a policy framework for the wholesale criminalization of Black and brown communities that opened the door to enhance police repression and mass incarceration, twin pillars of U.S. domestic counterinsurgency strategy that continue to this day. In 1986, a group formed in South Central LA that fed off this raw sense of desperation and rage, forever changing the face of hip-hop in the process. That group was NWA, the first successful pioneers of a new subgenre of hip-hop, gangsta rap. These days, it's hard to appreciate the shock and terror that NWA provoked in America's white supremacist power structure, and especially its frontline troops, the cops.
Rap music promotes, by its very language and by its very actions, promotes violence against authority and consequently violence against law enforcement.
Songs like Fuck the Police became rallying cries for a generation of Black and brown youth whose rage would soon find popular expression in the LA riots of '92.
Fuck the police coming straight from the underground. A young nigga got it bad cause I'm brown. And not the other color, so police think they have the authority to kill a minority.
But while NWA provided a megaphone to Black youth's widespread hatred towards the police, they also injected mainstream hip-hop with a violent strain of misogyny and homophobia that continues to fester to this day. They also provided the emerging hip-hop industry, largely controlled by the white capitalist power structure that they were rebelling against, an opportunity to make millions of dollars selling records that glorify Black and brown youth killing one another over nothing.
A lot of the brothers that were my same age, man, they were involved in the type of shit where they were killing each other, you know? They were killing cats they grew up with, that they went to church with, that they went to school with, that they played ball with, trying to be part of the whole gang set culture, you know what I mean? Or they were trying to get their money selling that dope, and like, that's cool, whatever. But really?
No future in the gang, slinging cane is proven. I lost real good friends behind the 90s shooting.
I was living during the crack era. And so the criminalization that began this whole mass incarceration that we have now, this new Jim Crow, it was heavily going on during that crack era all the way through the 90s. And so, of course, the theme in the music was about either fighting against this new, drug that was dropped onto our community or using it as a means to get out of the community. So it's always been a part of the music from the very early days.
Partamos primero como justo de la frase de lo personal es político, porque aunque pensemos que nuestros actos son individuales, van a tener una repercusión también en nuestra familia, en nuestro grupo cercano y así en la comunidad y en la sociedad de la que somos parte.
There's a difference between telling your story and glorifying some of the things that you have to do to get by. So I appreciate, when artists can maybe talk about the gangbanging past, talk about, the past where you had to sell some shit, you had to do some shit that you're glad you don't have to do anymore.
Government plans, fencing us in, life in the pen. For selling shit you put in our hood, knowing that do it. We desperate, starving and dying to eat, dying the street for a fraction of what I get now for sound and fly on the beat.
I feel the weight of not glorifying some of the things I've done in my past because I see it happening with other artists, with their songs.
Cold gang with the cocaine. Cold. The more money make more rain. Pouring up a paint while I'm back in propane. Point blank range, give a nigga nose range. Skip to my loo with the pack and the cat. Jiffy, loo with the breach, where they at?
In hip hop, they might call it bitches, hoes, guns, money, sex, murder, and all that. But if you look at the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the US government, that's all it is. It's a reflection of the culture that we live in. It's the values that we've inherited as part of the conditions of survival in this country to prioritize the things that are gonna get us pussy, get us respect, and get us paid, and get another motherfucker to recognize us, and that is some bullshit.
It's been really motivational to me when artists cast aside all of the parameters of respectability politics and are willing to speak their truths without coddling the feelings of those who are oppressing us.
That's the job of my music, to challenge everything that's been imposed upon us, to say no and go drastic with it. Again, like I don't follow the format, the status quo of hip hop. I'm also still unlearning a lot because it wasn't like I grew up in a native community. I grew up in a city because of the fact that people that came generations before me were removed from their homelands and placed into cities.
What you won't find me doing in my music, lyrically, you won't find me killing niggas. You won't find me on some exploitative, downgrading shit about women. You won't find me talking about killing faggots and faggot this and faggot that.
There's lots of people saying fucked up shit in the world of hip hop. To me, I can't have that. You know, I'm not gonna throw a show where I book those guys, or I can't do collabos with them. I can't work with them. I'm not going to sort of taint the work that I'm doing with this hate, right? Try to promote the kind of hip hop that I'd like to see. I work with people that are doing the kind of hip hop that I'd like to see.
En el contenido que sea, hay un contexto político del que surge, porque hay una necesidad también de retomar nuestra historia y que a pesar de que no necesariamente va a ser como un activismo más marcado, sí hay una intención de sobrevivir a un contexto de violencia.
I feel like it's extremely important that you are responsible and disciplined and mature enough to not abuse that platform, to be predatorial, to escape any kind of accountability for patriarchal tendencies.
I learned early that I had to be 3 times better than the guys to even remotely get even recognized, and it made me already come out swinging, and I never stopped swinging because I already recognized that I had a disadvantage. I was already seeing patriarchy and sexism.
Whenever I do a show and I'm the only woman on the lineup, we have to call it out. We have to address the fact that I'm not the only woman there because I'm the only woman with something worth saying, with something worth listening to. I'm the only woman there because we don't listen enough to the women around us, and we don't give up the mic. Men don't give up the mic enough.
Put my face in the book cause my people are profile. Erased from the books and my people are told lies. Sky's the limit, go fly. Cali Green, we go high. I mean black and no fire, winning you, I grow wise.
MARSEI de LE est à la une. Je reconnais plus ma ville, paraît qu'elle est devenue bien une. Choc des cultures 2013, prix de vitesse, flic et caméra à chaque coin de rue.
Reina y señora del caos que me habita. A veces tirana, a veces proscrita. La mejor batalla es conmigo misma. Soy autogobierno, mi bandera es anarquista.
When I wake up, no makeup, half naked, I feel like I'm the shit. Pardon my language, but hang-ups do not define the kid. No, I'm not flawless, I'm scarred up and I'm fine with it. My body are the laundry list of all of life's unkindnesses.
Indigenous wisdom unheeded and sacred things depleted.
A lot has changed in the 45 years since hip-hop's founding. For one thing, many of the iconic inner-city neighborhoods where hip-hop first flourished have been redeveloped. Their former communities scattered to the winds of gentrification. Far from the dilapidated pressure cookers of revolt and subversive urban decay that they were in the 70s, these neighborhoods have become homogeneous sites of high-rise condos, hipster indie venues, and Starbucks franchises. Which is not to say that this process is a done deal, and even less so that the social contradictions that birthed hip-hop have disappeared. The South Bronx is still a largely working-class area plagued by racist police violence, and there's tons of vibrant hip-hop coming out of America's traditional urban centers, from Baltimore to Oakland.
Bum, the target of poverty by a white devil. Cause I wasn't testing at my reading level. I was testing any of these busters. Where you from, body? Lola like, baka nagtatambay dun sa kalye parate.
But as urban demographics have shifted, so too has hip-hop's center of gravity. In the United States, the shift has been most notable with the rise of Southern rap, beginning in the early 2000s, and the emergence of Atlanta as a new hip-hop epicenter. Similarly, as it has spread to countries all around the world, hip-hop has been transformed and enriched by countless local culture and traditions, each of which has added their own mark, while generally honoring the spirit of youthful defiance and resistance to authority that's been so key to hip-hop's global appeal.
Hip-hop culture is an expression of oppressed people's reality.
Hip-hop is so global now that literally every neighborhood, every community is representing. See people doing hip-hop in Palestine.
BDS يعني مقاطعة هاي الطريقة اللي بيستجم في تل أبيب زي اللي استجم في جنوب أفريقيا.
Native artists are just really standing up globally and representing and telling a story that really needs to be heard. And it reminds me of the early days of hip-hop. It's not like packaged and pretty and fake. We just raw truth and raw facts. So big up to all my native comrades out there holding it down with hip-hop.
We never even knew what it was like to be poor until money was shown to us in the first place. We didn't know what poverty was, and so we're always trying to catch up to something that really we don't belong to, that in fact our culture is at odds with, our traditions are at odds with.
Recordemos que mucha parte del arte también está elitizado, que solamente en ciertos sectores se genera o solamente desde ciertos lugares se valida. Sin embargo, el hip hop permite que desde las calles, desde los barrios, desde la marginación, se pueda crear y se pueda generar también estas voces.
I feel like music is especially important in sharing political ideals with youth, taking care of our people, to maintaining our identities. So it's absolutely like foundational.
What is black? Black is a response to white supremacist categorization of human beings. Something that doesn't even begin to encompass the vastness of history and cultural reality. When I'm in Zimbabwe, as an ambassador, if you will, for hip hop, I encounter people that are Shona, people that are Ndebele, people that are of these different cultural realities doing hip hop.
South Africa is big right now with the resistance music.
Yo, we've been colonized. It's not a lie. Working class, let's start to organize. I believe the masses will arrive. Revolution will rise and decolonize. It is time to mobilize. Inya was no taco.
For people all over the continent to have taken hip hop, not in an exploitative, oppressive way, but in an empowering way. Taking black culture, born in the United States, created as a result of the separation from the continent of Africa, taking that back, reinterpreting it, and it being a bridge for black people all over the fucking planet Earth. That's a powerful thing, man.
Anti-establishment feelings that I had, it could have been harnessed by a million different things, but it was harnessed by good, radical politics, you know, through music. Music has an opportunity to word things, you know, that are hard to say. Music has a way of cutting through to the heart of something. It has that power to kind of give voice to a situation or to paint a picture about a situation in a way that writing doesn't.
Every time that you're doing the show, you have to carry that message regardless if it's like 2 people or 200 people or 1,000 people in the crowd. I think smaller shows become more intimate, so you have an ability to be able to interact with people there and also be able to not just do the show and not just be the entertainment, but also have a conversation with people and talk more about resistance afterward.
I want to connect with people that are doing real work and doing radical work and doing revolutionary work, and I want to bolster their movements, and I want to use music to be involved in that. That's what I love most, you know, that when I get to play at an actual site of resistance.
It's like taking it back to the roots of what the music was created for.
The free shows we do for the youth, the ghetto youth, are always the most powerful shows because they don't have the constraints that the commercial shows do.
The truth rests upon the lies. Our people have been traumatized. So Donald Trump no different than Barack Obama in our eyes. Yep. They are part of a system that wish we was gone. And history talks with forked tongues. So the misery goes on in this illegally occupied territory of death.
A number of the shows that I ended up doing outdoors at Standing Rock had the same kind of energy. It was powerful in what that was coming together at, you know, the spirit of resistance. And then, I mean, we've had a number of shows with just a bunch of kids on the res, the same kind of energy.
We the survivors, we the oppressors, yeah, we the
savages banging on the colonizer.
Yeah, we the savages
banging on the colonizer.
We are finally facing the end of the cycle, an end to the terror fueled by the Bible. Take a turn against the civilized pale-face, join the struggle.
I'm living it now.
un montón de pueblos originarios que están haciendo rap en su lengua, hay un montón de muralismo que se esté como intersectando entre el graffiti, o sea, digamos, en la técnica de aerosol y los códices antiguos, ¿no? Ahora ya hay como ese nuevo encuentro entre las culturas pasadas y las nuevas culturas, pero lo que permite el hip hop es poder volver a apropiar al contexto actual algo que se estaba perdiendo.
There's a difference when I'm on a reservation or when I'm at like an inner city program doing a show for kids who might also be undocumented, you know, doing a show for like young women that have never been on stage but, you know, would like to be or, you know, have like poems that they want to write or whatever. It's so much more of a reciprocal occasion when it's folks who share, you know, identities.
It's like one of the last things that we have is our ability to speak out. Even if we feel powerlessness, hip-hop makes us feel powerful.
Island woman rise, walang makakatigil. Brown woman rise, alamin ang iyong ugat. They got nothing on us, nothing on us, nothing on us, nothing on us.
Fuck the police coming straight from the underground.
Within revolutionary circles, oftentimes we can get bogged down in abstract theoretical debates and lost in what can seem like an endless cycle of protests, actions, and organizing campaigns. And while these engagements are essential and should not be dismissed, it's also important to keep in mind the vital role that culture plays in building effective movements of resistance. At the end of the day, capitalism and the state are not just material forces, but ideological systems as well. This is something our enemies are well aware of, which is why they devote so much time, energy, and resources towards creating propaganda, much of it masquerading as entertainment. From the countless high-budget TV shows and Hollywood movies glorifying police and the military, to music promoting frivolous consumerism, a look at the dominant forms of cultural production can tell you a lot about the values being promoted by the powers that be. But thankfully, we have the ability to fight back by producing and promoting subversive countercultures that promote our own values of solidarity, mutual aid, direct action, and antagonism to capitalism and the forces of the state. Let's not squander the opportunity.
Here we go, yo. Here we go, yo. So what's the scenario? Here we go, yo. Here we go, yo. So what's the scenario?
Just don't sell the fuck out, man. It's simple. Just stay true to what the fuck you represent and don't change up.
La gente que va a estar criticando siempre va a existir, pero la necesidad de hacerlo es lo que nos va a motivar realmente.
Be ready to do it against all odds. Be ready to do it by yourself, but also be very intentional about building community with others.
Don't be afraid to link and network with people that aren't in your neighborhood. You gotta connect, and you can't just preach to yourself. You can't just talk to yourself. You have to connect with people. If you wanna make it, yeah, you can upload something to SoundCloud, but to get the full experience of the art and for people to hear you, to get exposure, you're gonna have to go out there and perform, and you're gonna have to go out there and link up with other people.
Backpack, smacker, testament dropper. I'm a root respecter. Been to my aunt, kid to Masada. Study it all, past to the present, resurrected.
You have a duty. If you're making radical music, you need to help build the foundation in your community for radical music to come in. So you have to help book the shows, you have to help find the spaces, you have to get the sound systems, you have to help facilitate that. You're not just making music and radical music, you need to help with fostering radical music community.
The term is many hands make light work. We can get more done together than we can by ourselves in certain formats. And then sometimes less is more. Sometimes you have to cut dead weight and you have to step away from people who don't have the same priorities as you. And you have to be okay with doing that.
También tienen que ser muy observadores y muy observadoras de su cotidiano. Voltear a ver qué es lo que está pasando, escuchar, abrir bien los oídos para ver qué cosa está sucediendo alrededor, porque la palabra también tiene una responsabilidad y si tú vas a enunciarla también tiene que ser como desde esa honestidad de quién eres, desde dónde hablas y además te da también ese valor dentro de la comunidad.
Nobody's gonna do this for you. You know, look at the DIY ethic of punk music that needs to be applied to hip hop more. And you know, we need to do for ourselves, and we need to build up our own spaces, our own community, our own networks, and we need to share that amongst each other. And you know, everybody can rise together.
The goal of my making music isn't to explain myself to someone who doesn't understand my background. The goal is to connect with the folks who share that same path and who find strength and healing in hearing their story being told, who, you know, may otherwise feel very much alone.
It's cold because I can probably only speak to indigenous MCs based on an indigenous message, because for me, I understand that talking about resistance, talking about decolonization, talking about revolution, whatever it may be, the average person does not like to hear the indigenous perspective, the true indigenous perspective of resistance, because it challenges even their existence.
Don't be afraid, don't cut yourself off, and don't listen to people who say, this hasn't been done so you can't do it, or it's weird and it's different. Some of our best artists were doing something that nobody else was doing before, and it's okay. It's all right to not rap in the same cadence that everyone else is rhyming in. It's okay to mix your music with other genres. It's okay to be different and to not sound like everyone else.
Sometimes people aren't going to fuck with you, you know, but stick with it, because eventually what happens is after years and years, you get better at what you're doing, you get clearer about what you're doing, you learn from your mistakes, and when that is combined with a sustained sense of joy in relation to why and how you work, you're unstoppable.
If you're going to try and build a radical current towards indigenous resistance, you can't waver. You can't switch up based on the fact that you're not getting support. You're not going to get support. There's going to be so much stacked up against you. You have to be uncompromising, because everything that you represent is problematic to the average person, even those people that suggest they support indigenous resistance.
Stop inviting women to just the all-women events. Don't be embarrassed when we grab the microphone and rock it when you're in your circle full of guys. But people start to look at diversity in that way of inviting people to the table so that we all can break bread and all do this thing that we call our culture, it'll change. And if they don't open the door, break the fucking door down. Kick it open. Fuck asking.
These record labels slang our tapes like dope. You could be next in line and sign and still be writing rhymes and rope. You would rather have a Lexus or justice, a dream or some substance, a beamer or necklace or freedom. Still a nigga like me don't play a hate, I just stay awake. This real hip hop and it don't stop till we get the popo off the block. They call it hip hop, hip hop, hip hop, hip. It's bigger than hip hop, hip hop, hip hop.
We don't fight for the money, for the greedy, for the white man. All we want is our freedom.
As we continue to resist the resurgence of far-right reaction, further entrenched inequality, gentrification, and an increasingly repressive state apparatus, it is very important that anarchists build and strengthen connections with those outside our immediate circles. Part of this requires that we actively spread our politics through popular subcultures like hip-hop that resonate with millions of people who share our hatred of police and capitalist society, but won't necessarily be inclined to come out to all our meetings, rallies, or reading circles. And the other part involves listening and learning from established histories of resistance and struggle in order to better understand and identify points of affinity and possible collaboration. Thankfully, there are lots of amazing individuals already doing this important work, but we need more of them. So at this point, we'd like to remind you that Trouble is intended to be watched in groups and to be used as a resource to promote discussion and collective organizing. Are you a hip-hop head interested in helping to contribute to your local radical scene, or looking to build one in a town where it doesn't exist? Consider getting together with some comrades, organizing a screening of this film, and discussing where to get started. Interested in running regular screenings of Trouble at your campus InfoShop community center, or even just at home with friends? Become a Troublemaker. For $10 a month, we'll hook you up with an advanced copy of the show and a screening kit featuring additional resources and some questions you can use to get a discussion going. If you can't afford to support us financially, no worries. You can stream and or download all our content for free off our website, sub.media/trouble. If you've got any suggestions for show topics or just want to get in touch, drop us a line at trouble@sub.media. If you want to hear some tracks from the artists featured on this episode, check out the latest Burning Cop Car, our radical hip-hop podcast at sub.media/BCC. Just a heads up that since Submedia is a fully crowdfunded project, we'll be starting our annual fundraiser drive soon to make sure we can keep cranking out videos year-round. This episode would not have been possible without the generous support of Todd, Marius, and Avispa Media. Stay tuned next month for Trouble number 16 as we take a closer look at the trial of the so-called J20 defendants, who were mass arrested in the streets of DC at the historic protests against the presidential inauguration of U.S. war criminal-in-chief Donald J. Trump.
No one wanted to just show up and just show out. Like, there was a definite message about disrupting the inauguration.
Now get out there and make some trouble.
By the time I get to Chuck DMPE, mis vecinos escuchaban mi PMD. En casa la cosa se mantenía más PG, así que duro podía rockear Run DMC. Pensé que era solo en inglés hasta que vi sí. Me enseñó que el hip hop en español sonaba así. Ese sí que era más underground que Wiso G, que con su química también puso su grano en mí. Y llegó K.I.S. a filosofar y Tribe, LL, Rakimi, de la L.O.N.S, Premier J, Dilla, Zulu.